In case you're able to qualify 100 points, that means you're able to get 95% or 5% down payment on the either purchase or the refinance.
Wow, 95%?
That is correct.
95%? Is that possible in Canada? I mean, is that possible in Toronto at least? Like realistically?
The 95% mark really depends on a lot of things. Definitely
Right.
and also,
Hey everyone, welcome back to channel. Nowadays, everyone talks about how slow the market is. Nothing is selling, no one is coming to take a look at my property. So there are a lot of people that are not considering of purchasing a real estate properties in Toronto at least. But as you know, when one door closes, another door may open up. Today we're going to talk about a subject that everyone is talking about. Today we have something very special for those of you interested in investing and developments. It's called MLI Select. MLI Select stands for Mortgage Insurance Select. It's a program offered by Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation to provide mortgage loan insurance for multi-unit residential properties. Some of you may heard about this program from somewhere else, and I've heard from other sources where they make things very complicated. So today I brought you someone who's very special and who's already working in this industry, who has expertise in this program. So I would like to welcome my friend, Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
hi Jeff, how are you doing?
Good, how are you? So we were just talking about MLI Select, and I heard about this project from many different sources, but none of them were able to give me a straightforward answer of what MLI Select is. So in your own word, can you tell us about what MLI Select is all about?
So the government of Canada, as well as CMHC, has been trying to tackle the housing crisis overall in Canada, and there has been many efforts. And MLI Select is a new program that was launched back in 2022 to address three key main factors within the housing crisis. One is affordability. The other is energy efficiency, and the third is accessibility of buildings for the tenants. Depending on how the building's designed, you are able to obtain different points from these three criterias, ranging from 20 points all the way to 100 and plus points if you aggregate all the points from the three categories. Based on those, the way that you design them, once you qualify for X number of points in the program, then you are able to get special amortization periods or DSRs or special terms from the CMHC, which is the Insured Mortgage Program, and be able to get more favorable terms when you get the lenders to sign up for your property.
Okay, who is this program was made for? And what is it different from the traditional loan programs that was already provided?
The traditional lenders, let's say the A lenders like TD, RBC of the world, they typically, for the commercial buildings, they typically provide all the way up to 30-year amortization. And some B lenders sometimes provide up to 35 or even 40 years. But these programs are not insured programs by CMHC. So they typically mean higher interest rates or more strict guidelines in terms of how you qualify for these loans. But because it's a CMHC, which is the federal organization that's insuring these mortgages based on the qualification that I mentioned, the three categories, if you qualify, then the CMHC is basically underwriting your project, meaning they're guaranteeing the loan, which is the reason why it's an insured product. As a result, the lenders are able to give you a better rate compared to a typical mortgage and be able to provide you with a longer amortization all the way up to 50 years, depending on
50 years.
50, depending on
Wow.
the number of points that you are qualified for based on the
Okay.
three categories.
Okay, so I understand that you have already developed properties in Toronto in the past without using the MLI Select program, but at the same time, you are now going through the process of getting a loan from CNAC with the MLI Select. What initially attracted you from using the MLI Select program for your projects?
So, as I said, I guess the biggest benefit is a longer amortization period. But the key factor within the CMHC MLI programs is that it needs to be a commercial property, meaning that for your property, there needs to be a minimum of 5 self-contained units, which means there's a separate entrance, kitchen, washroom, and a living space. So it could be a bachelor, it could be a three bedroom, but it needs to be a fully detached unit within your properties. And as I was growing from building duplexes, triplexes, recently in 2023 and fact, the City of Toronto have enabled developers like myself to be able to create 5 different units within a single lot in Toronto, which led us to be able to bridge from just going for a typical residential loan, converting a property into a 5 unit, and then be able to qualify for these CMHC commercial programs, as I said, which has more favorable terms. So
Okay.
as a whole package, you have more units within the same real estate, the area, and you're able to get a better loan. So as the different levels of the government tries to push for these, the increasing density in the neighborhoods, or trying to solve these housing crises, the government is providing developers through these paths to be able to turn your properties into something bigger and be able to profitable and make yourself a little bit more profitable than other investment assets.
Okay, so from what you're saying, it looks like with the MLI Select program, you are getting a better cash flow because if you have a longer amortization period. So I guess that's one of the. It's a huge benefit, of course. Are there any other benefits you're getting from MLI Select program?
Yes. So for these commercial programs, the way that these loans are underwritten by the lenders, like TD as an example, if it's a residential loan, you're being qualified based on your income in most cases. And that's
Okay,
how it's done for the residential mortgages. But for the commercial loans, the amount of mortgage that you can get is based on your net operating income. Which in this case, though, the typical commercial mortgages, the way that the lender put some sort of buffers into their calculation is that once you from your rents, if you subtract your expenses, that's your net operating income. They typically put maybe 20 or even 30% buffer into their calculation so that they subtract 20 or 30% from there, and the remaining portion of it has to be the mortgage. So that's how they typically calculate how much you
right,
can qualify for the loan. But
right,
because this is a insured product from CMHC, the buffer that the lenders put on these loans is just 10%, which is 1.1. So they
right.
divide the net operating income by 1.1 instead of either 1.2 or 1.3, depending on the lender, so
Okay,
that you're able to, with the same amount of rental income, you're able to qualify for more loan for the property either you're purchasing or refinancing. Another advantage of these commercial CMHC MLI products is that typically for a residential loan, the down pay requirement is 20%. So 80% loan is the maximum that you're typically able to get. But for
right,
these loans, for these insured commercial multifamily loans, if you are able to, based on the point system, if you're able to get more than 50 points, then you're able to get up to 85% loan, so 50 down payment. In case you're able to qualify 100 points, that means you're able to get 95% or 5% down payment on the either purchase or the refinance.
wow, 95%.
That is correct.
95%. Is that possible in Canada? I mean, is that possible in Toronto at least? Like realistically?
The 95% mark really depends on a lot of things. Definitely, interest rate is a big factor,
Right.
and also the rental income, as I mentioned. So it really needs to be the timing is very
Mhm.
important. Also, at the same
Okay.
time, the way you build the property to be able to maximize your rental income is another key factor in order for you to maximize your portfolio through these 95% loans or 5% down payments.
Okay. One other question that I have is so this program isn't brand new. We started having this conversation about MLI Select not too long ago. But then I've heard about MLI Select a lot in Calgary in 2022 and 2023. Why all of a sudden are we talking about MLI Select in Toronto?
That's a great question. So as you said, back in 2022, 23, biggest market of the CMAC MLI programs is actually in Alberta. The reason being, as I said, if you're able to get 100 points, then you get 95% loan to value mortgages. But it is really difficult to get that 100 points in Toronto. From these 3 categories, if your building is not big enough, then you're not able to get enough points from the accessibility. So the 2 criteria that you're looking at is either the energy efficiency or the affordability. And maximum points you can get from the energy efficiency is 50 points. So, which means
I
that you
see.
have to get the remaining 50 points from affordability.
I see.
However, the way that CMHC calculates these affordable criteria is
Mhm.
based on the median renter income within each
Okay.
cities. So it is very interesting that for Toronto, for a very interesting reason, the way that it is calculated for Toronto is 1350 for
1350 a month?
a month, regardless of
Okay.
the unit size. So
Oh,
it
okay.
could be a bachelor, it could be a three bedroom, regardless of the
Okay.
unit size. The unit has to be under 1350 a month. However,
How do they calculate that number? How did that number come out?
so
And
it
does
is
that number
on.
change every year?
So it is a number that was there was a benchmark that was
Oh,
used, and the benchmark
okay.
was the 2019 Stats Canada, the
Oh,
median income number for each cities.
I
But
see.
interestingly enough, that 2019 benchmark data that we're using hasn't changed since the inception. So
Oh, really?
uh,
Oh,
there,
okay.
there's always debate about, CMA should update that to reflect the latest data, but it's always been said, but it's never been done.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So there is a chance that it might either go up or down
that is
in the
correct.
future. Okay.
That is correct. So the benchmark data that we're using, interestingly enough, in Toronto, as I said, is 1350, but in
Okay.
Calgary, probably at that time, 2019, the oil market was booming or something. So the media rental income has been identified as higher than Toronto. So
Wow.
the number, the rental income to use to qualify as an affordable unit is about $2,000. I'm not from Calgary, so I don't exactly know the actual number, but I believe it's close to $2,000, and that is actually the market rent for a one bedroom in Calgary. So you're actually not creating any affordable units in Calgary. You're just getting market rent, but you're able to qualify for these.
Ah,
Um,
I see. So it was easier in
Easier
Calgary.
for them to, if, for projects in Calgary to be able to qualify for 100 points, but in Toronto it's a different story.
Okay.
But the reason why this MLI Select program has been a hot topic in Toronto for the past year or so
Right.
is really because of the initiatives from the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto has an initiative called EHON, EHON. It's expanding of housing options in neighborhood. It's a short form of that. The kind of the idea or the ideal outcome of these initiatives is to be able to solve these housing crises that we're dealing with in Toronto specifically. And previously, in a residential lot in Toronto, you were not able to build a fiveplex the way that I've described earlier. But as of late 2023, there was a zoning change that allowed for any property in Toronto to be able to build a fourplex, which means a 4 unit property in the main building, and
Okay.
also be able to create a additional dwelling unit, whether that's a garden suite or a laneway suite at the back
Mhm.
of the house, so that
Right.
within a property you're able to create the total of 5 units, which becomes a leeway for you to be able to jump into the CMAC programs.
Oh, I see. I see.
So typically, one of the biggest benefits of the EHON program is cutting the red tape. Meaning, typically, if you were to create these 5 units, you had to pay development charges for the
Okay.
units that are being newly created. But
Right.
as an example of my own project that's currently being built, if that development charge was still in place, the amount of expenses that would have incurred for the city of Toronto to be able to get the
Yep.
building permit is close to $400,000.
Four
Uh,
hundred thousand dollars.
that is correct. The number
What?
is it was $389,000 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number,
Wow. Okay. So
but
it's that number alone is it made the project almost impossible.
that is correct.
Right.
But as I mentioned, as a part of the EHON initiative, because they wanted to cut the red tape and be able to help the developers to actually solve these housing crisis by increasing density in the neighborhoods, they actually waived all of the development charges. Um, that was the biggest kind of the reason why the small developers like myself kind of jumped into these programs, and that plus the Canadian government, the federal government, is also providing a HST rebate on the rental properties, purpose-built rental properties that's out there. You first have to pay the HST for the amounts that was generated by building a bigger building. You first have to pay that HST, but the next year you get that as a rebate. So it is the whole combination of these initiatives, government rebates, as well as these waiving of these charges, and also when the project is done, using the CMHC program as an exit to be able to recoup your investment
Right.
is is the reason why the 4+1 projects plus the CMHC programs has been the hot topic over the past
Right.
year.
So let's talk a little bit about the numbers, because obviously the another reason why MLI Select was popular in Calgary was because the home price was obviously lower than in Toronto. Even though the market is slow in Toronto right now, home price is still pretty high. So do you think if there are specific areas in Toronto that this program can be most effective, or are there some areas maybe you can share that this could work for some people or for yourself?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of great neighborhoods in Toronto, and as us Koreans, we love North York and the areas that we're more familiar with. But I tend to focus on a few criteria. One is the acquisition price of the building, because one of the things that surprises many people is that if you compare the three-bedroom rents in, let's say, downtown Toronto versus North York or East York or Junction or Eglinton West for that matter, the difference isn't a lot. It is relatively very close, very close. But the property price itself could vary significantly.
Right,
Um, if you're looking at, say, North York, probably a property that needs to be, gutter down, as an example, you're probably looking at minimum 1.2 million bucks.
right.
If you're lucky,
Minimum, minimum, minimum.
minimum. And if you're looking at areas like East York, which is,
Okay,
let's say, 5 to 10 minute walk from the Bloor Danforth line,
okay.
or the Eglinton West, which is where the Eglinton LRT is opening, hopefully towards the end of the year. In those areas, the acquisition price can be under $1 million, and especially
Right.
in the Eglinton West area, there are deals that have come up in the last couple of months where the acquisition price was in the low $700,000.
Okay, so low $700,000. I want to stop you right there. We're talking about detached. We're not talking about townhouses or semis because that can be developed. So are you telling me that there is a detached house on the Eglinton West where it's big enough so that you can have 5 units in total?
That is correct. In fact,
Really?
there was a property that was sold 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
which is right at Dufferin and Eglinton, and it's about 2 to 3 minute walk from the soon to open LRT station. And that was sold for $702,000, if I'm not mistaken.
700, 702?
702. I
700.
believe that was the number. I can't remember.
And that was detached, obviously.
That was a,
Bungalow?
that was a detached. That was a detached
Detached.
bungalow.
How big is the lot size?
So the lot size was 25 by
Wow,
115. The
that's
depth,
pretty big.
it is the minimum size required to build a proper 3 bedroom 5 unit. So it really depends on what you're building at the back. So as
I
I
see.
said,
Oh, right, right, right.
you're building the fourplex in the main building, and you're building the garden suite at the back. So if you're building another 3 bedroom in there, then you'll need probably 115 or 120. If you're only building a 1 bedroom, then you probably can get by with like 108, 110. If the garden suite at the back is, whether it's a single story or 2 story building, depending on the story, the distance that needs to be separated between the main building and the garden suite differs.
Ah, I see.
So that's the main reason why you need a little bit more space,
Right.
depending on how high you want to build your additional dwelling unit.
Let's say, you built a house, you did all that. What's the cash flow we're talking about?
So that's actually a great question because the fact that this is a CMHC insured product, they ensure that the cash flow on these projects are cash flow positive. When I said previously, because it's an insured product, the buffer, for the lack of better words, or the technical term is the DSR, debt service ratio, is 1.1. That effectively means that 10% or 1.1, that is the amount that you're keeping as a buffer in case things happen, right? So obviously, that is one of the reason why the property is cash flowing positive. And another reason why the property does cash flow positive is because when when you calculate the expenses for a property, the way that you would typically calculate is different from the way that CMHC calculates it. So, as an example, when you typically think about expenses, you think about the taxes, hydro, utility, Enbridge gas, and maybe some budgeting for any type of maintenance that might come up. But in case of the CMHC MLI programs, on top of these five, they add a couple more. So things like you will need someone who's professional to do the tenant management because it's a larger
Oh,
building.
management service. Okay.
Correct. They add the management services, and they also add the buffer for the vacancy rates. They also
Oh,
add the buffer for the salary that you have to pay out to yourself. They also
oh,
right. So there's a lot of things that
oh.
you take into account when
Okay.
you calculate these expenses
Okay.
compared to when you're doing it on your own, right?
Let's see. So if you
So
were to do it all on your own, like say if you're the one who managed the unit, and if you are paying yourself and do all that, then the cash flow will get
be
better.
even greater, correct.
Okay.
So even if you the way the CMHC underwrites it or calculates
Mm,
it, they considers all of these factors, and even
I
if you
see.
consider them, you have to cash flow positive. So
Oh wow. Okay.
right. So either way, you're cash flowing positive. But if you are taking on the daily maintenance as an example on your own, then obviously there's more room for you to cash flow positive.
So how much would it cost at the end of the day? How much would it cost to build this, and how long would it take? And how much of a time does it take for you to get the actual loan from CMHC?
Let's start with the amount of funds that's required.
Okay.
So there's three different phases where
Hmm.
your money you need to fund the project. The
Okay.
first phase is when you acquire the property, and depending on what's the acquisition price, if you're looking at let's say like $800,000-900,000 properties, then you're probably looking at 20% down payment plus the closing costs. So let's say $200,000. The second phase is when you're applying for the building permit. So in the second phase, there's two steps to it. One is you
Okay.
first have to apply for zoning and then the building permit. We're probably looking at 4 to 6 months for the whole process.
Okay.
So things to account for is the costs to pay the architect as well
Okay.
as the mechanical, structural engineer, electrical engineer, all these folks. You
Hmm.
probably have to account for upwards of $50,000 for it. The
Okay.
second part of that is because you already have the property, there's the carrying cost to it. So
Right.
let's
Oh, right.
say,
Right. Right.
right, the mortgage of 6 months, that let's say that's like $30,000, $40,000 around there. So hold hard cash that needs to be injected at that second phase is roughly around $100,000.
Which includes that carrying cost that you
Correct.
mentioned. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, carrying cost and the architect and everything.
I see.
And the third phase is actually the construction. Um,
Right.
if you are able to, if you have the cash in your pocket and you're able to carry the project on your own, then you have to pay the whole project. But in typical terms of these projects that I'm mentioning, you're probably looking at anywhere between 1 million bucks to let's say 1.2, $1.3 million, depending on the scope of the project. So typically, in that case, you're looking for a construction lender to help you out with the funding. Uh, and depending on your qualification and your experience, you might need to be required to put down 30% of the construction, or based on your experience, you might cut that down to maybe 20%. So if your project is $1 million, then let's say $200,000, 20%. So $200,000 upfront, $100,000 for the second phase, and $200,000 for the construction. So you're probably looking at $500,000 in total of your own money for the project, and including all the mortgages and the construction loans and everything, you're looking at probably anything between $2 million to 2.2 or $2.3 million. That's
Okay.
probably the range that you're looking at.
Okay. Then if that's the case, and then so you would land all that money, and then and after the property is built and you get the loan secured by the CMHC with the MLI Select, you pay that loans back.
Correct. So for a property that you spend, let's say, 2 million bucks, uh, the appraisal that will typically come from these properties will be around $3 million.
Oh,
And let's say if you are able to qualify for, as an example, something along the lines of 85% loan to value, which means 50% down payment, then from the 3 million, what you can actually take out as a refinance is about 2.3 million if you subtract all the CMHC costs and the lender fees and everything. So from that 2.3 million, you would pay out the existing loan to the construction loan and everything. So if the project was 2 million bucks, then you put in your own money of 500K. So the existing loan becomes 1.5 million. So from $2.3 million refinance that you got, you pay back that 1.5 million. So you're left with $800,000. So effectively, the way that you can think of it is you put in $500,000 in for your project,
right,
you get $800,000 out after the completion of the project, but you get to keep the property with
right,
about, let's say, another $500,000 left in the property with a cash flowing property. So another question was the time frame.
right.
So depending on obviously delays and everything, if you're lucky and get everything as soon as possible, you're probably looking at maybe 13, 14 months from the time of closing,
Okay.
depending on the either zoning, building permit, construction, or financing delays. You might be also looking at maybe 16 to 18 months. One of the things that I do want to, make sure is all of these numbers are subject to change based on interest rates.
Oh,
So
right.
right now, as of the filming of this video, the numbers that I was using was at high 3%
I
for
see.
the CMHC. But with the current economic climate, things are creeping up a little bit. So
Right,
things will be a little bit less than what I have mentioned earlier. But
right,
uh, at the time of your underwriting, you'll need to use your own interest rate to understand what the
right.
exact ROI is going to be for your project.
Okay, sounds good. And so if anyone's interested to find out more about this project, they can reach out to you and you can help them.
Actually, so I have three projects that's going on right now, and
Okay.
those are the three actual use cases that are representative of these projects. One is completely funded by one individual, which is myself.
Okay.
The second project is a group of investors that have come up with the sufficient amount of funds to be able to carry the project. And the
Okay.
third project is an existing homeowner that wanted to turn their
Oh,
property into these four-post projects. So those
I see.
are definitely the three types of projects that I'm currently working on right now.
So if anyone's interested in, start a project like this, you let me know. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.